A $15 bucket. 25 pounds of tomatoes. 75 days. That's it. While everyone else is fighting blight in raised beds and staking plants that fall over in the first storm, you're about to learn a method so simple, so productive, that once you see it work, you will never grow tomatoes any other way. No yard required. No tiller. No fancy trellis system. Just a 5-gallon bucket from any hardware store and the technique I'm about to show you. This isn't theory. This is the exact method that produces heavy, disease-resistant, restaurant-quality tomatoes in the smallest space imaginable. And by the end of this video, you'll know every single step. No yard. No problem. Let's grow some serious food. Welcome back to Garden Glow Hub. If you're here, you're either short on space, tired of losing plants to soil-borne disease, or you understand that one well-grown tomato plant can outproduce an entire grocery store aisle. Maybe all three. If that sounds like you, hit subscribe. And if this video helps, send it to someone who needs it. Here's the thing. The bucket method doesn't just save space. It solves every major problem with tomato growing. It eliminates soil-borne disease. It gives you total control over water and nutrients. It lets you chase the sun by moving the plant. And it makes support and harvest effortless. Here's what makes this work. Tomatoes don't just grow roots from the bottom of the stem. They grow roots from anywhere the stem touches soil. Every inch of stem you bury becomes a new root zone. Traditional transplanting berries may be an inch or two of stem below the root ball. This bucket method lets you bury 8, 10, even 12 inches of stem at planting time, giving the plant a root system 3 to 4 times larger than a normal transplant, in the exact same footprint. And the bucket itself is portable, reusable, and when disease or bad weather threatens, you just move it. Let me show you exactly how to do this, start to finish. Why this method works. Before we get into the steps, you need to understand the science, because this is what separates a handful of tomatoes from a 5-gallon bucket overflowing with them. Tomato stems are covered in tiny bumps called adventitious root primordia. Say that with me, adventitious root primordia. These are dormant root structures, just waiting for contact with soil and darkness to activate. In the ground, most gardeners plant a seedling with just the root ball buried, leaving 4 to 6 inches of stem exposed above soil. That stem never becomes roots. It's wasted potential. But if you strip the lower leaves and bury 8 to 10 inches of that stem, horizontally, or at a deep angle, a technique called trenching, every one of those buried nodes activates and grows its own root system. More roots means more water uptake, more nutrient uptake, and a plant that can support double, even triple, the fruit load without stressing. The bucket adds even more advantages ground planting simply can't match. Drainage holes prevent the waterlogged roots that cause blossom end rot. The container isolates the plant from soil-borne diseases, like early blight and fusarium wilt, that live in garden soil for years. Dark plastic warms the root zone faster in spring, letting you plant 2 to 3 weeks earlier. And because the whole thing is mobile, you can chase 8+ hours of direct sun across your patio or balcony, something a fixed garden bed can never do. The result? A single 5-gallon bucket, managed properly, can produce 15 to 25 pounds of tomatoes from one indeterminate plant. That's real, dense food production from about 2 square feet of space. What you need. Let's talk about what you actually need. 5 things. First, the bucket. A food-grade 5-gallon bucket, with drainage holes drilled in the bottom and lower sides. Never use a bucket that held chemicals. These run $5 to $10 at any hardware store, or free if you ask a bakery for their used frosting buckets. Second, your seedling. Choose an indeterminate variety for max yield. Better Boy, Sun Gold, or Celebrity are reliable, heavy producers that keep fruiting until frost. And here's a tip most people get backwards. Buy a seedling that's leggy, not short and stocky. You actually want that extra stem length for trenching. Third, soil. A high-quality potting mix. Never garden soil or topsoil. It compacts and suffocates roots in a container. Mix 2 parts potting soil, 1 part compost, and a handful of perlite for the drainage and nutrition tomatoes demand. Fourth, fertilizer. Tomatoes are heavy feeders. Start with a balanced organic fertilizer at planting, then switch to something higher in phosphorus and potassium, like a 5-10-10, once flowering starts, to fuel fruit instead of just leaves. Fifth, support. A cage or stake. Even in a bucket, an indeterminate plant will reach 5 to 6 feet tall, and it'll need support once fruit weight sets in. One more, almost an afterthought. And finally, mulch. Straw or dried grass clippings on top of the soil to lock in moisture. Containers dry out far faster than ground beds. Preparing your seedling. Preparation is where most people lose yield before they've even planted. So pay attention here. About a week before transplanting, start hardening off your seedling. Set it outside in a sheltered spot for a few hours a day, increasing the exposure daily. Skip this step, and the shock of direct sun and wind can stall growth for 2 full weeks. On planting day, strip off all the lower leaves, leaving only the top cluster of 3 to 4 leaves. This exposes the stem sections you're about to bury. Don't be afraid to remove more than feels comfortable. Every leaf node you strip and bury becomes a future root, not a wasted branch. And if your seedling is tall and leggy, that's ideal. The more stem you have to work with, the bigger the root system you'll build. Planting process. Choose your location carefully. A full bucket weighs 40 to 50 pounds once watered, so pick your final spot before you fill it. You'll need 6 to 8 hours of direct sun. Fill the bottom third of the bucket with your soil mix. Now, instead of planting the seedling straight down, lay it at a 45-degree angle or dig a shallow trench. Lay most of the stripped stem sideways, just below the surface, with only that top leaf cluster poking out. Cover the buried stem with 2 to 3 inches of soil, then fill the rest of the bucket to about 2 inches from the rim. Water thoroughly until it runs out the drainage holes. This settles the soil and activates those dormant root nodes. In 5 to 10 days, you'll see the plant straighten upward and push new growth. Underground, that buried stem is quietly building an enormous root system. Pruning and support. This is the most important part of the entire method. It's what separates a scraggly bucket plant from one that produces 20+ pounds. As the plant grows, small shoots called suckers will emerge in the joint between the main stem and each branch. Left alone, these turn into competing stems that split the plant's energy across dozens of smaller fruit clusters, instead of concentrating it. Once a week, pinch out any sucker smaller than your thumb. I know, it feels counterintuitive. You're removing growth, but it redirects all of that energy into fewer, stronger stems that produce larger, more numerous fruit. One more thing. Install your cage or stake as soon as the plant reaches 12 inches tall, before the root system anchors it. Staking later risks tearing those roots you worked so hard to build. Ongoing care. Between prunings, your job is watering and monitoring. Stick your finger 2 inches into the soil. If it's dry, water deeply until it drains from the bottom. Containers can dry out in a single hot afternoon, so during peak summer, you may be watering daily. Consistency matters more than volume. Wildly fluctuating moisture, bone dry, then soaked, is the single biggest cause of blossom end rot and split fruit. Feed with your phosphorus-rich fertilizer every 2 to 3 weeks once flowering begins. And watch for yellowing lower leaves, a common early sign of nitrogen or magnesium deficiency in containers. A diluted liquid feed usually corrects it within a week. If you want to see more container growing hacks like this, hype this video so we can reach more gardeners. Hit that like button right now. Flowering and fruit set. Around 6 to 8 weeks after transplanting, yellow flower clusters appear. Tomatoes are self-pollinating, but a gentle daily shake of the stem or a light breeze helps pollen release and dramatically improves fruit set. Once fruit begins forming, resist the urge to over-fertilize with nitrogen. It produces lush leaves at the expense of the tomatoes you actually want. Harvesting. This is the payoff, and it's incredibly satisfying. Pick fruit when it's fully colored, but still slightly firm. Tomatoes ripen a bit further after picking. This timing gives you the best flavor, while protecting against cracking from a sudden rain. Because of that trenched root system, you'll notice this plant keeps producing heavily for weeks longer than a normally planted tomato. The extra roots simply give it more fuel to keep flowering and fruiting. Extending the harvest. At the end of the season, before your first frost, pick all remaining green tomatoes and let them ripen indoors on a sunny windowsill, or use them for fried green tomatoes and relishes. Cut the plant back to the container. That soil, refreshed with new compost, goes straight into next year's bucket. Troubleshooting. Let's address the most common problems. Lots of leaves, few tomatoes, usually too much nitrogen or not enough sucker pruning. Cut back nitrogen feeding and prune weekly. Blossom end rot. Dark, sunken spots on the fruit bottom. This is inconsistent watering, not a calcium deficiency in the soil like most people assume. Water on a strict, even schedule, and mulch to retain moisture. Leggy weak stems? Not enough sun. Move the bucket to a spot with a full 8 hours or supplement with a grow light on a balcony. Splitting fruit? A dry spell followed by heavy watering or rain. Keep moisture even, and pick fruit slightly early if heavy rain is coming. There it is, the complete method for growing up to 25 pounds of tomatoes from a $15 bucket. You've learned why this works, what you need, how to prepare your seedling, the exact planting process, the critical pruning technique, ongoing care, and how to troubleshoot the most common problems. Your action plan: grab a bucket this week. Pick up an indeterminate seedling. Mix your soil. Trench plant it. Prune weekly. And harvest your abundance in about 75 days. This is real food from 2 square feet of space. If I can do this, you can do this. If this method clicked for you, share it with someone who needs to see it. And subscribe for more practical growing techniques that actually work. Until next time, grow smart, grow abundantly.